Okay, so we're back from Old Riley's. Somehow or another the truck got delayed and it took it till 4 o'clock to get here instead of 3. So the next thing we need to do, we need to take the bracketry off for the throttle cable. Just a few bolts there. We'll take those brackets loose, get them just folded back up out of the way. Don't even have to unhook the cable from the throttle body. And then I'm going to take the upper radiator, or the water neck outlet. I'm going to take it off, and we're going to kind of wiggle this around. We're going to break the hose loose, but not take it off. We're going to kind of wiggle this around because this holds about 2 quarts of water in the radiator hose. And that's 2 quarts of water that I don't have to get up on the floor. So we're going to take this loose, roll this back. All right, so I've got the water outlet loosened. I've got the upper radiator clamp loosened. And before I loosened either one of them, I lifted the hose up and tried to slosh all the water out of it that I could. So I've got this up out of the way. I've got the air conditioner compressor wires out of the way. So let's see what happens. Okay, good. Cool. Nary a drop on the floor so far. There we go. Not a drop of water hit the floor. Okay, so here, this is a little Harbor Freight transfer pump. These were under $100. This is a cheap little pump, but the important thing about it is the pumping element in it is a rubber star-shaped deal that runs inside of an eccentric, just like a water pump on a motorboat or outboard motor. So I've got me my intake hose is shoved down to the bottom of the radiator, and I've pumped this several times. You got to pump it for a little bit, let it wait for a little bit, pump it a little more, let it wait a little more, because it takes a while for the water to run down. Cool. So we've got her pumped pretty much out. We'll get the camera around. We'll take the lower radiator hose loose. So this is a cheap tool for removing these spring hose clamps. Now, I've heard people cuss and complain about these spring hose clamps. I've never had a lick of trouble with them. You do need the proper tool to remove them if you want to have a good time doing it. Do not use worm hose clamps, the regular old hardware store hose clamps, on radiators with plastic fittings. They will cause the radiator to crack or go egg-shaped where the water connections are. So use the right tool, use the right hose clamps.
Fluid puked.
No, that's antifreeze, son, not tiny fluid.
Yep. Puked all over the side of my creeper.
Well, yeah. You shouldn't have had your creeper underneath there, buddy.
It puked on the middle part.
Okay, so now we've got oil cooler lines, and this is automatic, so we got trans cooler lines. And these are an E-clip, and usually they're supposed to have a little plastic cover over them. This one, the plastic cover on this upper oil cooler broke, so we'll have to replace it with a zip tie. But you just kind of work these out of there. Now, when you buy a new radiator, do not leave the parts house without making sure that these are in the proper location in the new radiator. I have gotten home and didn't have these. So, you're not supposed to reuse these, but I do have a little box that I've got a bunch of these in, just in case. Okay, so this is the last line to hook up, the last cooler line. Now, these can be problematic. These are the oil cooler lines, so they've got a hose built on the end of them. But when you go in, you want to make sure you're going in straight. Like the tranny cooler lines, they were jabber-jawed and they wouldn't go in there straight, and they were a nightmare to get in. So you just kind of push, wiggle, and then you get a click, and that's when she's in the hole. Now this one, I broke the little plastic safety ring off of it, so we're just going to put a zip tie around it. Those little safety rings don't do a whole lot anyway. I've taken several rigs apart and they didn't have a sign of that ring left on them, and the lines were just fine. It's just kind of an extra margin of safety. So there we go, there's that.
I'll drive safe and watch.
Alright, so before we put the upper radiator hose on this thing, we're going to fill it as far as we can fill it full of antifreeze. These things are notorious for being hard to burp out because the hose comes up off of here, goes up, turns around, goes down, comes back up, and it makes a trap in there, and they don't burp or the hoot. So if you fill the block up to here, you have a lot better day. So without any further ado, hit it, bud. Shut it off, shut it off, shut it off. No, stay there. Okay, give me some more. Whoa!
Sorry.
You did great, buddy.
Oh.
So now we've got everything filled up to just about here. All right. So one of the things that I do on these, and I don't know if it's a good idea or bad, but when I put in a new thermostat, if it does not have a air burp hole in it, usually, often they have about 1/8 of an inch hole with a T-shaped piece of brass pinned up in there. Son, get down. And if they don't have that, then I drill an 1/8 inch hole. If they do have that little piece of brass running through a hole, I take it out, throw it away. It needs something in the thermostat to burp. You got to be able to get the air out of the bottom and into the top. So that's just what I do. Don't know if it's right, wrong, or otherwise, but it's how we do it here. So we've got all the radiator hoses, the upper and lower hoses on. The radiator's as full of antifreeze as we can get it right now. We've got our cooler lines hooked up. We've got our fresh air snorkel hooked up. We've got the lines, the big PCV valve line hooked up. We've got our electricals hooked up to it. We've got electric hooked up to the fan clutch. Everything is back together as far as I can remember. Now the next thing to do is start this thing up before you put the fan and the shroud and everything on it. Start it up and rev it up, and then get underneath the hood with it running carefully and waller around on the transmission lines and the oil cooler lines. You don't have to get stupid with them, but just get on them and waller on them a little bit and make sure that them suckers are in the hole, because it's a whole lot easier to fix while we're in the shop, we've still got access to it, than it is on your way to church and in the rain and have one of those lines pop off with all the shrouds and everything back on there. Ask me how I know. Okay, I hope this actually comes through on the video, but very few of these that I've ever taken apart have been put back together the right way. Okay, this is your lower fan shroud, and then this is a plastic tray that sits underneath of your radiator. Now, you'll notice that the tray under the radiator is completely forward of this fan shroud, and these little clips interlock to where it holds all of this stuff together. To actually release this clip, you have to reach behind there with a screwdriver and push this clip forward and roll it like so. I hope this is coming through. But that's, if you don't get these put together right, they'll come apart and get up in the fan. So that's how that's actually supposed to be together. The old one was not together like that. It wasn't together at all. It was just hanging there, and it was busted in 3 or 4 pieces. But that there is how it's supposed to be. And I hope my head wasn't in the shot for that whole monologue. Turn the light back on, Gibber.
Okay, Dad.
So I didn't mention this earlier, but when you're taking these fans off doesn't matter which way the fan is, like if you got a power or air conditioning or not. The fan, to remove the fan, if the fan turns, whichever way the fan turns to take air through the radiator in normal operation, that is the way that you take it off when you're on the nut. So the fan nut is on the clutch on this. It turns like so to take air through the radiator. So I'll put my wrench on there and tap it that way to take the fan on. And I'll go the other way to tighten the fan up. And that's all the tighter she needs to be. So we've got everything wrapped up. We've got the antifreeze just about up in there, and we got everything on top end buttoned up. We've got all the fan shroud put back on there, and before you start it, you stick your finger in there between the fan and the shroud all the way around, and you should have clearance for at least your pinky finger between the fan blade and the shroud all the way around. If you don't, you've got something together wrong, and the fan will rub, and it doesn't take much for that fan rubbing to make very bad things happen. So with that being said,
y'all drive safe and last for a year.
Right. Mama just stuck her head out and said, it's time for to eat tacos. So let's go get us some tacos. Get out of there.
Taco Tuesday.
Taco. I'm going to eat me a taco.
I ate 13.
You're going to eat 13 tacos?
Yeah.